Well, the four people involved in the shooting that happened in Iraq, three were convicted of manslaughter and one convicted of murder. But then later on in 2020, Trump pardoned all four of them.
That's right.
What was the what was the meaning behind the pardon? How did that actually happen?
Since they'd been through, the DOJ, very much stimulated by the Biden administration, by first Obama and Joe Biden, were hell-bent to get a conviction somehow. And the first time the case was thrown out for prosecutorial misconduct. And then they came back and tried him again, mistrial. And then they came back again and basically overtried him. And again, if you're trying, again, instead of trying them in their home states, they brought them all to Washington, D.C., to the center of the swamp, okay? I'm sorry, if you're from Idaho or Montana or Wyoming or Colorado or Texas, Washington, D.C. is not a jury of your peers. That's an alien, different set of people. And even then, after weeks and weeks of deliberation, the jury finally convicted them. And in fact, the first conviction was so disgusting because they tacked on an extra 30 years to their sentence. Why? Because they used automatic weapons in the commission of their crime, ignoring the fact that those automatic weapons were issued to them by the State Department and as a required piece of gear for them to do their job.
Wow. Okay.
It shows how bad prosecutors and the judge, truly permanent members of the swamp, were in this case, and it was not justice at all.
But ultimately, they were pardoned. I think that the main guy ended up doing like 6 years.
They all did. They were all
sentenced at the same time, right? So they did about 6 years, but then they all got out, and they got all their rights restored. They could own guns, they could vote, everything else like that because of the pardon.
Yep, they're living their lives and productive citizens. One of them taught himself biblical Greek while he was in prison. They said the guards, when they would close their cells at night, said, "Man, it is hard for me to do this because you don't belong in here." And none of them joined a gang. None of them did anything. They actually did a lot of education and mentoring other prisoners, even teaching other guys how to read. So I'm extremely proud of how the guys conducted themselves and how they're living now.
Well, by 2010, you ended up selling Blackwater.
Yep.
Was it a huge profit?
No. The business, it generated a lot of revenue. It was a very efficient operation. It made money. I plowed pretty much every dollar back into the business. And on the aviation side, we bought an air operation in 2003 in the spring. One leased aircraft and 6 guys as part of the business. And 6 years later, we had 73 aircraft that we owned and operated for the U.S. government, operating in difficult places, multiple aircraft shot down in combat. And the lawfare, political assault from all aspects of the federal government. For 2 years, I was spending about $2.5 million a month in legal fees.
2.5 a month.
Oh,
wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it was disgusting. It was all, look, the ATF, Customs, the Department of Agriculture came at us as how we were shipping dog food to Iraq. Just every kind of proctology, a blizzard of subpoenas. And, we'd planned to train U.S. military special operations and conduct and do very difficult missions abroad to serve our country, not planning on that kind of bureaucratic assault by the government. So yeah, I'm a little raw about that yet.
Right. So you just wanted to get out of it at that point.
Yeah. And sold the business for a fraction of what it had been worth 2 years before.
Do you think the massacre is what kind of caused all the problems and all the media problems that ultimately caused the business to drop in value?
I think that was the excuse. But the fact is, we operated extremely efficiently. We did things for a fraction of what the government required it to do. We got pulled into stuff that we never planned on doing, and we answered the call. I mean, after Hurricane Katrina happened, in the Gulf Coast. We had just taken delivery of a helicopter for one of the overseas jobs, and it was in the States. And I said, hey, as soon as the pilots reset, just start flying to Louisiana and we'll figure it out. And sure enough, one of the guys in our class, in our company, was in a Harvard Business School class with a senior guy from the Coast Guard. So our aircraft, November 505, became Coast Guard 505 by the time it arrived in Louisiana, and we ended up evacuating hundreds of people, 128 people. And then private sector started calling for help. And so we'd been there for probably 2 weeks. And to be clear, we did not take anyone's guns away at all. When our guys got to the French Quarter in New Orleans, and we beat the Louisiana National Guard from 5 states away, beat them to the scene.
Yeah.
There were dead bodies in the streets, not from us, not from the storm, from looters. It was chaos. There'd been 13 Walmarts picked clean. We got hired to protect the Walmart distribution center, for example. But then the FEMA came to us and said, we need help, because they went to the Federal Protective Service, part of DHS, and asked for hundreds of police officers. And they said, their employee union said, no, the conditions are too rough and too unsafe. We're not going to go. So FEMA asked us, and we went. So again, no drama, capable people answering the call. We didn't really send a lot of military guys. We sent mostly law enforcement people. And because we sent the right people with the right logistics support, it worked, and we were there for probably a year. So that's the kind of company and attitude of moving to the sound of the need, urgently.